Happy New Year. I'm back in the station. It's been, what's today's date? The 14th? Wow, I miss you guys. I really do. It's really exciting to be back in Carbon Square, 351 cities in town, 22 neighborhoods in the city of Boston, and counting, because there's always neighborhoods being added. But guess what? I'm asking folks to continue to wear your mask, stay 6 feet apart. Please follow the CDC guidelines. We're being safe here in the studio. We're 6 feet almost apart. We have our mask, and we're going to just jump right into our discussion this morning. It's a lot going on with COVID. The Boston Public School students are planning a walkout today. 20,000 teachers were tested positive, 9,000 students. That's a lot. That is a whole lot of folks. Voting Rights Act, the voting rights are being attacked again. So you guys who are out there, men, women, young people, get ready for the upcoming elections, because we must vote. We must organize, mobilize to make sure we take the Commonwealth back, because we're losing that battle, but we can win. Dr. King once said that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. So we are here to take a stand, continue to be safe, continue to support your neighbors, and be kind in this new year. In this pandemic, be kind to one another. People are on edge. I've seen some things that is not so cool in Boston, in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Folks with attitude, people are on edge. I mean, it is just like we need to just start to be a little more patient with one another and support one another. Remember, we have upcoming elections this year. There's a lot going on. We have a big gubernatorial race, and we have an exciting guest in the studio with us, all the way from East Cambridge. And her name is Danielle Allen. She is a professor at Harvard University, and she is running for governor. You know, we like to work on governor's campaigns here. We got the first black governor in Massachusetts and we are looking to do something special again. Repeat history. Welcome to Boston Black News. How you doing?
Thank you so much, Ron. It is so great to be here. And, you were just saying how good it feels to be back in your studio after the new year. It feels great to be here. This is a beautiful place, and I can just feel the warmth and the heart. And you said, let's be kind to each other, take the Commonwealth back. We've got to take it back with heart.
That's right.
We've got to bring heart back in. Heart has not been in our politics here in Massachusetts, and we've got to bring heart back in. And I'm just really glad to be here with you in this beautiful space. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So, COVID, and we're going to jump right into that, but before we go into the COVID, let's do this. Why don't you tell us your story? Who is Danielle Allen?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thank you for asking me that question, Ron. So you said I'm a professor. It's true, I'm a professor. That's been my day job, being a nonprofit leader, leading organizations in the education space for years, 20 years at this point. But who am I really? I come from a family of fighters. A family who have always fought for voice and empowerment. That's on both my sides. On my mom's side, my great-grandparents fought for women's right to vote in the early 20th century, and my great-grandmother was president of the League of Women Voters in Michigan in the 30s. And on my dad's side, my granddad was, proverbial, literally fisherman turned Baptist preacher in southern Georgia, and in the 40s helped found one of the first NAACP chapters in northern Florida. And we all know what Florida's like now, but it was a heck of a lot worse back then. So it was super dangerous work. And my parents met and married in California in the 60s. So my mom's white and my dad's black. And when they met, their marriage had just become legal across the whole country. And they always taught my brother and me to lift our voices on our own behalf and for everybody else around us. But the deepest family lesson was, doesn't matter what your day job is, you are always also working in the community, with your community, on behalf of empowerment and rights and democracy for all. So I've always done that when I started out as a young professor, I worked with others to build an adult education program for folks trying to find their way back into education who'd fallen out, adults working 2 jobs, folks who hadn't finished high school. We built a program so people could have a second chance. And I also engaged electorally. I was a regional field organizer in the 07-08 Obama campaign. But the truth is that just kind of, general family habit of civic engagement got super personal for me in 2009. I lost my younger cousin, Michael, in 2009. We came up together, Michael and me, and he was just beautiful, beautiful kid. He was probably the first baby I ever held when he was born in 1979. I was a lonely kid that year. I was being bullied on the school playground. And then my aunt delivered a ready-made new best friend. And he had a beautiful, bright mind, gorgeous smile, full of curiosity, wanted to travel the world and learn French. And instead of that, in 1995, when he was 15 and I was a couple of years out of college, he was arrested in Southern California on a first arrest for an attempted carjacking. And we all know that was a terrible thing to do. But we also all know at that point in time, punishment in California was just so intense. And on that first arrest, he got a sentence of 12 years and 8 months. Wow. And we all know what that's like because we've all seen it. We've seen it all over this country, and it is so deep and hard and hurtful. And on that first arrest, from the age of 15, he served 12 years. And when he got out, I was what I always called cousin on duty. So we were a big, huge family. In my family, my dad had 11 brothers and sisters, huge world of cousins. And I was cousin on duty for Michael in that moment. And we all know there's always the cousin on duty for whatever thing it is that hits a family. We work really hard in our family to stay connected and keep together. So it's trying to help put the pieces together, housing and school and jobs and the like. And you know how hard it is to get those pieces to fit. I remember sitting, with Michael in a car just weeks after his release, hot summer's day, we were just sitting there looking at a map, and the only job that would consider him was in one place, and then miles away in another direction, the only community college program with a path forward for him, and then miles away in a third direction, the only place with access to affordable housing and public transportation in between, slow and unreliable. And I just had that feeling, that horrible feeling you have in your bones, just dread when you're just thinking, I don't know how these pieces are going to come together. And for Michael, they didn't. So 2 years, he'd had 2 years out at the point in 2009 when he was shot and killed by somebody he met while he was in prison. And I know, again, the hurt is so deep. It's so deep for so many. I mean, that is just a profound tragedy, what we've lived through in this country in the last 30 years. And just above all, I believe we need justice and safety for all. And we've got to figure out how to do that. We've got to build a foundation for young people to stand on and thrive. So my story, it's really Michael that's brought me here today. Michael, I've been working ever since he died to try to figure out how we can make the world right for young people. And when the pandemic hit, that just made it so much more intense for me as well, just watching how the different impacts were for different communities and how people in power just didn't get it, didn't see what was happening, the way people of color were being pushed back to work without access to testing and PPE, and we were dying. We were dying when other people were okay. And, so that's really, it's not okay. It is time to take the Commonwealth back. It is time to bring heart back into our politics.
Speaking of heart, and you can look at me.
Okay.
Look at me. They're going to see you.
Okay.
Speaking of heart, I mentioned earlier in the broadcast the COVID cases of those who were being tested positive in the schools, the teachers, the students, and they're planning a walkout today. It is dangerous to be in. What is your take? Should the children be in school? Should they not be in school? I mean, I understand you had some policies in 2021 around this COVID, national policies. Can you share some of them with us?
Sure. No, 2020 and 2021, I jumped in. I was watching. I'm a professor at Harvard. I was watching Harvard build a bubble for itself. I was watching the NBA build a bubble, and then so many other folks didn't have access to the protection they needed. So I work with teams. I bring people together. I pull together a big network of experts and practitioners and mayors from around the country and community advocates. And we put together the first national policy roadmap advocating for a real ramp up of public investment in testing, in contact tracing, in supported isolation. So paid time off for people, resources of food, housing, security, and the like to support folks who need to be in isolation who didn't have stable situations. we did get policy into federal legislation and the like, but we did work on schools too. And,
Right.
Schools are an anchor for our kids.
Right.
It's really important. When the pandemic hit, our schools kept feeding kids
That's
who
right.
were otherwise going without food. In some cases providing a roof over the head for kids who were really struggling. And we have to see our schools as anchors and support them as anchors.
Right.
So I do think that in-person learning is the thing we should be aiming for our kids.
Right.
With flexibility. We need remote options for flexibility for sure, but there's a core that anchor of in-person connection with a whole community of caring adults who understand and bring the right perspective. That's what our kids really, really need. And so we need a state that invests in that and supports that.
Right.
So I totally get the walkout right now because our state government has not been supporting our schools. And
especially when there's reports on some of the masks are ineffective, some of the tests are outdated.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just really basic. We need the rapid testing there. We need to
Right.
clarify what the good tests are, what the bad tests are, make sure we have a huge supply of cheap, affordable, free tests that are the good ones so that people can use them as needed. It really is that rapid test piece, which is the key to getting us back to a place where we can manage this. Because the truth is, COVID is with us now.
It's
okay?
with us, yes.
It's not going away. We're going to have to live with it, and it's going to come in waves, okay? This wave, luckily, is breaking. We're
Right.
at the crest. We just crested. Can I talk about this on the radio? Wastewater. Okay, you look at the data in the wastewater.
Right.
A lot of stuff in wastewater, but among other things, virus.
Yeah, but no, that's what I want to know. You're the professor here, right? How do you test it in the water? How does that work?
It's DNA, basically viral DNA.
Okay.
And so what they do is you can just figure out the parts per milliliter of water of like little teeny actual fragments of DNA that comes from virus. And honestly, they can tell how many people have had showers lately, and you can tell how much virus is in the water.
Interesting. I always wondered that because I was thinking about that when they were talking about the water. I was like, okay, now I understand the sneezing and the coughing, but the water.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a hard thing, and it's become a situation out of control. The governor is a hard job. I worked for Governor Patrick.
Yeah.
I seen what he went through. I seen what I went through.
Yep.
Why would you want to be governor?
That's what I thought you were going to ask me something.
I gotta ask you.
Yeah, that's a fair question.
Yeah, no,
for sure.
And with
for
all
sure.
this going on,
For sure.
COVID.
But let's tell the truth, though, right?
Okay.
We know who does the hard jobs, right?
Yeah,
we do the hard jobs.
We do the hard jobs.
We show up for the hard jobs.
That's
Other
true.
people don't show up. We show up for
We
the hard
right
jobs.
here.
That's right. We step up. We
That's
sure
right.
do.
That's true.
This is a moment for stepping up, and I need others to step up with me.
Yes.
We've all got to step up.
Right.
It's been too long, and we have to be at the table making decisions, telling the truth about what's happening. One of the things I just feel the best about that happened in this last year is the work that the Black Boston COVID Coalition did. Because when our state was not getting the job done on
Right.
vaccine delivery, people stood up
That's
and
right.
stepped up. And every level we've got to step up. And it just happens that I do have the background, the experience, leadership in the nonprofit sector, policy experience that actually does equip me to do something like be governor. All right.
Okay.
So I got to step up in that way. And we've all got to step up with the resources we have and what we can bring to bear, just showing the path where we can really build that foundation for healthy communities and healthy lives.
How's the campaign going?
It's great.
Okay.
It's great. I love it. I mean, that's
Okay.
honestly, I'll tell you the most surprising thing, because it is hard work, okay, and I knew that before I got started. And I'll tell you the truth, in December 2020, when I first was, I started exploring and then launched fully in June, the attitude I had was like, I can do this. Again, we step up,
That's
right?
right.
Like, we're the people who get it done. I can do this. Grit my teeth, eat my vegetables, I can get this done. And instead, I'm having a great time.
That's good.
I love it. I feel so lucky every day. And getting to meet people all over the Commonwealth. I've had a great time in Springfield, Spring Hope, getting spending time with First Lady Swan.
Okay.
There, spending time with folks in Williamstown, North Adams, P-Town and Plymouth, all over the place. And
Right.
this is a beautiful, beautiful state. There is so much good work happening here and people solving problems. But we need a state government that can see us solving the problems in our communities and lift that up.
That's right.
That's what I'm really about.
And have you canvassed all 351 cities and towns yet?
I have not gotten to all 351 yet.
There's some places out here.
It's true.
I was around. I pretty much hit all of them, literally.
I believe you.
And it's a lot.
Yeah.
It is like, you'd be surprised, but you know what I've learned? There is a lot of commonalities.
There are.
In different parts of the state.
Yep.
There's some, of course, disparities,
Yep.
even within Boston, as far as living, health, and so forth. What is your plan? What is your plan as relates to, you had talked about COVID, but what is your policies like directly? What would you do if you was governor as of tomorrow? What would you just come right in and do?
Well, let's talk about the COVID stuff. 'Cause
Okay.
That's exactly where we are today. Yeah.
Right.
And there's a proverb that says, if you want shade today, the best thing to do is plant a tree 30 years ago.
Right.
The next best thing to do is plant a tree today.
Mm-hmm.
So job number one, we've got to get that rapid testing infrastructure 100% in place. So every surge, we're ready to go. We've got the tests available for all our schools. We've got tests to families so that families can use them, know their status. That's the really, really important thing. And alongside that, we've got to lift up our nonprofit organizations, our community organizations, our community health centers that have been anchors for people and for people's health. And we have to really support them in completing the work of our vaccine drive. Because, it's the case that the unvaccinated COVID is still 11 times more severe than the flu, okay? And we got to tell everybody we love who's unvaccinated, COVID is 11 times more severe than the flu.
How do you feel about showing your vaccine card to get into public places now? I went to the Celtics game a couple of weeks ago, and you have to show your card ID.
Yeah.
And, it's not really monitored. And I think about some of the small businesses who don't have the capacity.
Yep.
As far as having someone at the door checking the cards, as well as understaffed. A lot of these places are understaffed. What is your plan to deal with that piece of it?
Yep.
And do you agree with that?
We've got to split that conversation up into two parts, okay? There's the question of what you need in an actual surge during that emergency moment, and when the surge lasts about a month.
Right.
All right, and then there's the question of what you need on an ongoing basis. And we do need tools in our public health toolkit for those surges to keep people out of the hospital. It's just that simple. We're trying to keep people out of the hospital.
That's right.
And so just for the surge, temporary time frame for the surge, we do need things like statewide mask mandates and I think even vaccine passports for small businesses and restaurants. But again, for that surge, and so for Omicron right now, if we'd done it back in December to end at the end of January, that might be okay. We don't need vaccine passports from here going forward.
Right.
And we definitely don't need them just as a general thing like forever into the future. We definitely do not need that. We need it as an emergency tool in our toolkit during a surge. That's what I would say on that point in particular.
Okay, so today we want to introduce you to our community.
Yeah,
Are you
okay.
ready for some calls?
Absolutely.
We're going to be taking calls 617-282-0685. We've had Danielle Allen, who is a candidate for governor here in the studio, Common Square. Caller, you're live on Boston Black News. Caller?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Good morning, Brother Ron and sister. First, I want to.
Is this Brother Jamal?
Yeah, this is Jamal Crawford.
Hey, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Morning, Brother
All right,
Jamal.
good
Good to hear you.
Yes. So, first of all, sister, can you give me your correct title? Is it Professor Allen, Dr. Allen? What is the correct way to address you properly?
Okay, my favorite ways to be addressed are Danielle, Mama Allen, because being a mom is my most important title, okay? Sister Allen, and then Professor Allen, in that order.
Okay. All right. So I'm just, for the formality.
For the formality, or Dr. Allen is okay too, but
All right.
but I am Danielle.
Right, thank you. I just want to recognize, your accomplishments because, I can get into that.
I appreciate that.
It is important.
Black nerd, it's true, okay? I got to admit, let me just say up front, black nerd.
Black nerd?
That's what
Okay.
I am. Yeah,
Okay.
at the end of the
There
day.
you go.
Blurred,
Perfect.
that's what my daughter calls me, so.
Bird?
Perfect.
Blurred, yeah, black nerd.
Okay.
So I know I've heard a lot in regards to obviously the COVID thing and this. I want to know about a couple of other issues that are critical in Massachusetts, and once again, running for the governor. Normally here in Boston, we're just talking about Boston issues.
Yeah.
But as it goes in Boston, let's not forget our brothers and sisters out in Springfield and Lowell and Worcester and, Lawrence and all of that. So I would love to hear some of your thoughts on a couple of the big issues, which is one, in Massachusetts, the DOC, the prisons, has been scandal-ridden and run amok with, everything from suicides and inmate assaults and, improper contact with guards and all that. So I'd like to hear about that, wrongful convictions and imprisonment and so on and so forth. So I'd like to hear about, prisons. I'd also like to hear some of your thoughts around policing, which is obviously a hot-button issue. And once again, we tend to focus on Boston police. But, no, state police and Springfield police, which, was just under big scrutiny. So policing in general across the state. Also, guns. Not necessarily gun control, but how we as a state have some pretty stringent, gun laws, but yet they still seem to creep in through the border, right? And about the influx of guns, particularly to the inner city. And then lastly is education. So those are my 4 points. I'd like to congratulate you. I've watched since you announced. And, good luck to you, and I congratulate you, and I'll sit back now and listen to the responses.
Thank you, my co-host, Jamal Crawford. He laid it out for you. Go ahead.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Brother Jamal. I really appreciate it. You go right to the heart of the matter. I mean, just the story I told about my cousin Michael, there are so many stories, millions and millions of stories like that around our country. And it is just the greatest tragedy of generations. We have to tackle that straight on. So from my point of view, we've had an administration, honestly, that just plain hasn't cared about the question of the Department of Corrections. The problems are obvious. We have to bring accountability. We have to bring transparency. And above all, we need leadership that has a different project and purpose that starts with commitment to dignity and humanity of incarcerated people. Yes, people have made mistakes, but people are still people, and we have to have that as our core belief in all the work that we're doing. And, I'm really proud of, our former DA Rollins, now elevated to such an important leadership role. And I think she set a beautiful example of how we can go about really bringing a different approach to our system of corrections, of sanctions, of justice and policing. So yes, we have a lot of work to do, definitely around the state police. Also, just generally, making sure that we have policing we can be proud of is how I think about it. We want to be safe, okay? We all want to be safe, to your point about guns. We've got to address gun violence. And for me, that is about focusing on homicide clearance rates. There's just a lot of evidence that if you can really do a good job focusing on homicides, you can bring violence down generally. And I think we've got to do that. Now, that doesn't mean a lot of policing. It means the right kind of policing. And it means really focusing on training and the kind of culture and who we recruit into the work of policing. But I believe if we can put the right people in place in leadership roles, we really can change the culture and change our commitments. And we've got to also really make changes in terms of how we think about juvenile sentencing and the like. We've got to really lean much more heavily on restorative approaches and options, and I think really change that beginning point of connection to our criminal justice system. If we can really direct that in different ways, give people second chances, use restorative justice techniques, community-based kinds of consequences and engagement, I think we can really bring a big difference and bring a big change. It's a number one commitment for me. Education, you asked about education too. It is time. We have this sort of honestly myth we tell ourselves. We go around saying, Massachusetts, we've got the best schools in the country. Well, best on average, and average just hides really wide disparities and differences. And it really is time for us to combine excellence and equity. And we can do that. I believe we really need universal early education, high quality universal education ages 0 to 5. So there's some great legislation right now moving forward that I'm supportive of, but we all know at the end of the day, we've got to get kids that foundation really early, ages 0 to 5, so that they can stand up and thrive and show us their beautiful best selves.
Thank you, Jamal. Is that good? We have another caller on the air. Caller, you live on Boston Black News.
Good morning, Brother Ron.
Good morning.
This is Pastor Dan Walker.
Hey, Pastor Dan Walker.
I am intrigued by your guest. She sounds like she's ready to go.
Okay.
The question I would have, since Jamal went where he went, I'm going to go where I go, which is, the first question is, what would Danielle done differently concerning the Melena cast and what I call the Miracle Mile scenario, which, as far as I'm concerned, was one of the biggest stains on Boston's reputation and light that we've almost ever seen. How would she have handled that whole situation differently? That's the first question. The second question is, does she support the fact that churches need to be never thought of as non-essential? Churches need to be considered essential when it comes to crisis in the communities. So those are my two questions.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
And now,
Thank you, Pastor Walker. I appreciate that. Well, let me start with the second one. I'm a person of faith, and for me, one of the hardest parts of the pandemic was not being able to sing in my church choir. And I still can't. We're still not back to singing. And we get one person who gets to sing. The rest of us have to just
chime in, right?
Exactly. Hum behind our masks. Exactly. Yeah, that hurts. That still hurts. I miss that so profoundly, and I was glad that my church actually opened up pretty fast. We worked really hard to do social distancing and, one way traveling down the aisles between the pews and things like that. And yeah, I'm with you. Communities of faith are essential, and we got to help communities of faith be, among first to open, last to close in the case of an emergency, for sure. And not just in the heart and the spirit, but all of our communities of faith have been anchors for communities in this time of great suffering, with food, with housing, with helping setting up vaccine clinics and the like. So we've got to lift up the good work that's been done and really support that for sure. And that actually comes right to the issue of mass and caste. I mean, I think it's exactly the same issue. Do we start with the basic human need? Folks need homes, housing first. That's got to be the anchor for every healthy community. And that was our first policy agenda we put out, was a housing agenda. Mm-hmm. And, also just though to say, you ask, what would I do about that, as governor, sort of working with the mayor and the like, the single, I think, most important thing would be to step up first, not wait to be dragged into the conversation, but to reach out to Boston and say, hey, what you've got going on there, that's a Commonwealth issue. The folks who are in camps, they're in tents, they're coming from Essex County.
All over the place.
Exactly. Right. From the Cape, from Western Massachusetts. We do not have enough beds for substance use disorder treatment in Western Massachusetts. There are Commonwealth responsibilities there that we have to meet if we're going to really be serious about the suffering that people are experiencing at Mass and Cass.
Yes. We have another caller on the air. Caller, you're live on Boston Black News.
Good morning. I have two questions for you. Yes, my first question is, how would she make Massachusetts not only a leader for the rest of the country to follow, but also for the rest of the world to follow? Because Massachusetts has a reputation of always being the first of almost everything. So how is she going to address that? And second, what's the difference between a Commonwealth and a state? Because I would get confused. It has to be the Commonwealth or a state. What's the difference?
That's a beautiful question. I love that.
That's a good one.
I love that. The Commonwealth is just what it sounds like. Just what it sounds like. We share the treasury. That's right. We put our wealth to work together with heart for all of us. That's what it means to be a Commonwealth. And the folks who wrote our Constitution in Massachusetts, they picked the word Commonwealth. It wasn't an accident. They had choices.
It would be nice if wealth was common.
They literally picked the word Commonwealth. And I believe it is time for us to reclaim the spirit of Commonwealth, to see that we are one Commonwealth. It is a shared treasury. It is here for us to put our work together for all of us. So that's it. And in terms of, showing the way for the world, I'll tell you the truth. It's not about me. It's about us.
That's right.
It's about us stepping up, being the leaders together as a community. That's the lesson we need to show to the world. And we can show it.
Right. We have another caller on the air? Okay. I have a question. I'm sitting here looking at you as our governor, and I said to myself, what is your administration going to look like? Because what's going on up there now does not remind me of what I've seen growing up in the city of Boston and throughout the Commonwealth as it relates to diversity.
Yep.
What is it going to look like?
It's going to look different. So we'll just start there.
It's not hard, right?
It's going to look different, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not hard. You know, here we are sitting on the weekend. We celebrate Dr. King's birthday, and I know his family has asked us, you know, to be quiet in our celebrations while we work for the vote and the right to vote, and that's so important. And we do have the Votes Act to pass here in Massachusetts. It is sitting stalled right now.
Right.
Got to move it forward. That is really full access, same-day registration, you know, early voting, mail-in voting. So if you've got 2 jobs, hard to get the polls, there are lots of ways that makes it easier to vote through the Votes Act. We've got to get that moving forward.
That's
so
right.
Call your representative.
That's right.
But that said, I want to just add, one of my favorite things Dr. King wrote in Testament of Hope was that, you know, to get where we need to go, it's about power sharing, all right? It's about black and white, brown, everybody at the table together sharing power. And he said, you know, it's great the legislation that we've gotten through, it's great these other changes, but at the end of the day, what we are looking for is a society-wide change, and that change we'll know we've gotten when we've got power sharing. And it's at all levels, leadership, but it's also folks who come into, say, middle manager roles. It's also entry-level roles. There is so much talent in this Commonwealth that we're not tapping into. And so for me, you know, from the beginning, it is about building conversations, bringing people together, knitting our diverse communities across the state together. We can do so much more if we're ready to knit ourselves together and do work together.
So we hear about these resources coming to Massachusetts. They've come here, and folks that look like me don't have a clue. I remember when I worked in the governor's office, folks were asking me how much it costs to go in there. Literally. Folks do not understand city government. So what we try to do here at Boston Black News and my organization, Dunk the Vote, is to educate people about city services, state services, federal services. What will you do as governor to help educate our folks, people that have been actually disrespected, disengaged as far as getting resources from the Commonwealth?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, it's really bad. I mean, folks don't even know the difference. Some folks don't know the difference from the city's services as it relates to state. It doesn't seem nothing is being done intentionally to change that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, maybe what I could do is just share another piece of the COVID work that my team did, because you know, one of the things we were really concerned about was one of the most vulnerable populations was folks in prison, in jails and prisons. And people, families, as well as people who are incarcerated, needed to know, you know, what new rights were becoming available with early release because of health reasons, needed to know how to get access to the right kinds of health tools and so forth. So we built a team of people pulling together community advocates, people who have family members inside, to start working through the question of what are the questions, you know, what are the concerns, where are the points of confusion. And then we worked really hard. We built a communications package that came out of those conversations. So the point is just, you don't start by thinking that you know what you need to tell people. You got to ask first and ask, you know, what do you need? How can we help? You got to start with those questions. Then that's how you can start to build the communications structures to start breaking through those knowledge barriers that you're talking about.
We talked a lot about COVID. Let's dive right into voting rights, because that seems like that's the hot topic right now. What is your plan as governor as far as voting rights, and where does your stand on it? I know we want to pass the Voting Rights Act. What would you do?
We want Massachusetts to be, you know, setting the records, right? We want to be setting records on turnout. We want to be setting records on how easy we make it to vote and how well we protect our elections. Okay, we want to set the gold standard on all of those things. Yeah, and some of that is policy. It is the Votes Act. We've got to get that through, and I'm hoping that'll be done before I'm governor. I'd like to see a place where it's already all done well before we get to January 2023. So that's what we're working on now. But then there's the real question about engagement and participation, and that's, you know, your work is so extraordinary, and I would really love to be able to learn from you and think with you about how do we get to 100% turnout. You know, let's not shoot any lower than that. Let's hit 100% turnout, full participation.
Yes.
And what would it really take for us to get that done?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and some people make the case, we should have universal voting. That's, we know, like Australia, where it's like jury service and it's actually mandatory. There's a little fine. I say, we've got enough punishment going on in our world.
That's
I don't think we need that.
Right.
But we've got to get to full participation without that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that is about community organizations coming together, naming it, doing it together, making it fun as well. And I just would love your wisdom and insight on how we do that.
I would love to be a part of that. So why are you running? I know you answered it before, but do you...
Let me try again. Let me take another crack at it. I mean, the short of it is, our world is broken, okay? Our world is broken. And I've known that for a long time, deep in my bones.
Mm-hmm.
I've known that for many reasons, but also because of losing my cousin Michael.
Yeah.
And we poured everything we had into Michael, and here we were, a family, honestly, with resources of all kinds, and like ridiculous numbers of PhDs and law degrees and stuff like that in our family, and we couldn't fight the system. Okay,
Right.
It broke us.
Interesting.
It broke us, and so. I've been on a journey to figure out, like, if you sometimes, to get things right, you've got to change the world, okay? It's like, what's wrong isn't you, it's the world. So that's really why I'm running. And then the pandemic just drove that home again.
Right.
I couldn't believe it. I was just watching while, folks with access were getting what they needed.
Right.
And once again, people without access were dying. We're dying. It is so deeply wrong. And status quo is not an option. I just didn't see from any of our status quo politicians a different path. And I just couldn't sit by anymore.
Right.
I couldn't sit by. So I'm a non-traditional candidate for sure.
Right.
I know it looks a little crazy.
Professor, doctor.
I know, it looks a little crazy. But, I've gotten stuff done in my life. Like, I set my mind to it. I get stuff done. I build things. I've built a civic education provider here in Massachusetts. We've got curriculum in a dozen districts. I've led a $6 billion foundation, led a $60 million division at the University of Chicago.
Okay.
I steer organizations, I steer institutions, I steer them to change. That's what I do. I've never been a status quo person, and I just believe this is an all-hands-on-deck moment, and I'm trying to answer the call to service.
What is this about Chicago? Paul Patrick, Danielle Allen, Michelle Wu. What is
Barack
it about
Obama as well,
Barack Obama? I mean, what is it? Is it like...
it's culture. Yeah, it's civic culture. Like, it's definitely a place people step up, and there's just a really strong sense of connectedness across the city of Chicago. I love my time there. I was there for 10 years, and I did cross paths with President Obama at the time. I remember the first time I ever met him, and, he just was sort of across a parking lot, and he just sort of waved at me and said, "Hello, Professor!" I was like, he knows who I am. Like, how does he know who I am?
Wow.
So he was really special.
So what made you come here?
What made me come to Massachusetts was family.
Okay.
I came originally in the 90s for graduate school. My family has been coming and going from Massachusetts for generations. So I have a great-great-grandmother who is, did I get the number of greats right? Let's see, it's my grandmother's grandmother, anyway, is in, got her portrait in stained glass in Wollaston Congregational Church in Quincy.
Okay.
Right? And so I've had several generations come and gone. On my dad's side, my grandmother, partly because of Dr. King, always dreamed that her kids would go to school in Massachusetts, have their anchor here and stuff. So that's what brought me here, was school in the 90s. And then, in the 2015 when we came back, my husband's a teacher as well. He's a philosophy teacher.
Okay.
It's hard for two academics to get jobs in the same place, and we were just incredibly fortunate, like just major stroke of luck, to both get jobs here in Massachusetts. So that's what brought us back.
Okay. So I understand you know how to box.
Well, yes, I have. I do know how to do some boxing. I have had boxing lessons. I had a great boxing coach, incredible coach. When I was, I started off in this job at the University of Chicago as dean of the Division of Humanities, $60 million budget, 250 full-time employees, half of whom were, twice as old as I was, right? And so I was, young kid on the block, and a lot of reasons for people to be skeptical about me. And early on, I just found myself in these, weekly meetings with the president and the other deans. We all reported to the president, and 12 of us. I was one of 2 women in the room and only person of color, and it was just clear there was no space for me in the conversation. It was like a wall. And I was like, I've got to solve this problem. I've got to make some space for myself. And so my solution was go take boxing lessons. My coach was a guy named Heavy, and just he was brilliant. He was a big guy, like his name, and missing teeth, and but biggest heart ever known to man, biggest heart known to man, and he really taught me how to make space for myself, how to control the times and rhythms of a conflict, of a competition, and get in there and get the job done. So I did that. I got the job done for the folks, the stakeholders who'd wanted me in that role at Chicago. We brought change to the university.
So is that why you will box with a heart? With heart?
That's right, boxing with heart. Yeah, because
Heavy
had the biggest heart. Absolutely, best teacher I ever had.
How can folks help you in your campaign and give us some information how they can contact you, volunteers?
Thank you.
How does that?
Well, so for starters, allen4ma.com is our website. allen4ma.com. So that's all ALLENFORMA.com, and then /volunteer. And we need you, okay? We need folks to come together and link arms and get this work done for all of us and show the world what we can do here in Massachusetts. And basically, the most important date to remember is February 4th. Not very far away, actually, is when Democratic caucuses start.
That's right.
Okay? We need people to turn out, to be registered as Democratic voters, and to show up at your town or ward committee caucus to stand up for Allen and come be part of Team Allen and make the change. So we'll talk to you about that. We've got lots of information, training volunteers, and the like to bring people into the caucuses. And then there'll be a lot of work from there to the state party convention in June. And then there's a primary in September. But so that's really it. We'd love to have people sign up now, have house parties. I'm happy to come out, visit with the church, visit with your family, visit with friends or community organizations that you pull together. So we'd just love to get to know people and love to connect. This is about work we can do together.
Why should we vote for you?
Because we will do this together. We will change the Commonwealth. We will restore the idea of Commonwealth. We will deliver the foundation for healthy lives and healthy communities. Get the cost of living down, quality of life up, make sure everybody's got a roof over their head, an easy way to get to work, a good school you can have confidence in, and safety and justice for all.
Well, thank you for coming in, Boston Black News. We have Dr. Danielle Allen, who's a candidate for governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Make sure you check her out. We need some change in the city of Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We're going to be right back. At 9:30 hour, we're going to have Chris Dempsey, who's running for state auditor. He will be coming in and telling us what is a state auditor, for one, because some folks may not know. He's going to explain that and also his candidacy. Thank you again for coming out. We really appreciate you. I'm going to give you one of these. Black Votes Matter.
Awesome.
Right. We want to make sure you have that.
Thank you.
And this is something done to vote. We can fill that out, get on our mailing list so that we can make sure we stay in touch with you. Thank you again.
For sure. Thank you.
I just want to remind people that there is elections coming up. The Democratic caucus, February 4th. September, we have the primary. November, we have the general election. Make sure you continue to go out and vote. Cast your ballot. Again, wear your mask. CDC. This is no joke out here. People are passing on. People are getting sick. We want to make sure we change that. And we want 100% voter. We will be right back.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Tune in to see how extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, tune in to see how see how you
imperative that the truth about us we give. No more trying to get ratings with the hating. No more fake news. Now we can choose Boston Black News. No more fake news. Now we can choose Boston Black News.